just went.
Just went. I was gonna.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochrane. I want to welcome you for our 138th show, where we're going to be talking about a breakthrough in podcast statistics. Hey, Rob, good morning. How are you?
Great, Todd. How are you?
Yes, and I should have prefaced that with, I want to welcome my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee.
Oh, well, it's okay. It's just Rob over here. I've got a cup of coffee. I don't know, Todd, do you have a cup of coffee too?
I just have H2O this morning, no coffee. I'm not a big,
purist over there.
Yeah, I'm not a big coffee drinker, so it happens from time to time. But
yeah.
My wife has found these instant coffee is usually crap, but we found this instant coffee from Korea. Oh, it's awesome. So yeah, that is probably my only vice. But
I'm a big H2O drinker too, so I'm with you, Todd.
All right, good. That it's probably healthier for us in the long run, right?
It is. Well, that's what your body needs, right?
That's
anyway,
right.
That's not why we're here.
So we're gonna have a great show, and actually the line on Skype is open to our friends down in Australia. We've put an invite out to a guest that has made some big announcements this week. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Probably we're going to talk a lot about that. But if they're watching, they're more than willing to join us. But we're going to talk with or without them.
Yeah, exactly. They can either join in and kind of maybe stand up for their position or not. So we'll see.
Yeah. So, but anyway, they're welcome to, and we're nice. We're not gonna, as we we always treat guests with utmost respect. So, I guess we can kind of get right into it. Do you want to lead off and talk about what was announced and what made everyone's hair stand on edge for a little while this week, Rob?
Well, I can kind of set it up a little bit. It was Omny Studio, which is a company out of Australia, basically announced that they had a breakthrough technology that they were tracking 30% of the Apple podcast traffic, which has been up to this point undiscovered gold that was buried in the Apple ecosystem. And so it's really kind of a vague announcement about exactly what they're tracking, but they use a 30% number, and we can't seem to get anybody over there to kind of clarify what they're actually tracking, because they're blending this concept of tracking app usage from their own apps, from their own Omny apps, and somehow in connection with Apple's activity in their podcasting app. And we're not really sure what they're talking about, but they're kind of implying that they're tracking something that has been tracked for a long time on other platforms in maybe a different terminology. But yeah, that it's really, we're trying to get them to clarify what they're actually talking about here, because really the only data that's missing, and Todd, you would jump in here too, is once that file's been downloaded into the Apple app, the Apple Podcast app, or iTunes, that playback is what's, the black hole of metrics. All the other playback, the click play and the actual partial downloads and the downloads are all tracked, which is the majority of the playback.
Yeah. And
so did I cover it okay?
I think so, and they basically said, and let me read from their from this article that came on Inside Radio, and let me see if I can actually put this thing up. On Inside Radio, they said it can track a sample of podcast consumption taking place on Apple iPhones and other iOS devices.
Yeah.
Which would only be, iPads and computers. But they say while Omny can so far capture a sample represents only about 30% of Apple podcast listening, having insights into where the most podcast listening takes place is a big step forward as industry works to overcome its biggest monetization obstacle. Well, we already, and this is the thing that blows me away, is that they say that this is having any insight. Well, we've had huge insight into Apple consumption for many, many years. And as you said, the golden data that's not available, again, is once someone has subscribed to a podcast through any podcasting app that automatically downloads that show when a new episode is published. Once that media goes into that download hopper, it's forever, at this point, from what we know, forever lost. That data is gone. So if you are using the iOS podcasting app, which makes up a majority of the folks that actually subscribe to, as a matter of fact, we're going to have a big article out on Tuesday that breaks, not just, it wasn't because of Omny, but it was for some other stuff going on in space. We break down which apps download, which apps are capable of doing active plays and that type of stuff. But anyway, long story short, again, that play data is gone. You know, when you're in an iOS app and you've downloaded and you click play, there's no one that from the Apple Podcast iOS app, that data doesn't call home to mama. It basically, your action is private. So it's been a big contention in the space that we've always wanted Apple to open that up. And what was implied,
well, it's not really private, but Apple has that data.
Well, right, Apple has that data. So what was implied in this article, and I think the reporter probably just got excited, is that they assumed that this was something new. And, let's be very, very frank. If you have your own app that you have designed and you have put in tracking mechanisms, so when someone clicks play, that calls home, well, sure, why would you not do that in your own app? To date, I don't know of any podcasting apps like Overcast or, any of those folks. I don't know of any of them they're doing any tracking. So even if you look at Rob over at Libsyn in their app, I don't know if they're even doing play tracking. I don't think they've ever said if they are or they're not. I know they don't present that information to their podcasters if they do. So, Omny took a shot to the face because Rob, myself, you, and some podcasters weighed in and said, what exactly? So I was specifically trying to get Omny to get pinned down, and the only question I want answered from them is really one thing. Are you saying that you are tracking and able to measure podcasts that have been downloaded and then played? If you're saying yes, that you can do that, you got my attention.
Yeah, and you probably have Apple's attention too.
Right, you have my attention. And I actually am not at liberty to say what Apple has said or haven't said. But let me just say that you'll have my attention if that is actually the case. Now, if you are saying that you are able to track active plays, and I'm going to be very, very, very clear here.
Yeah.
And for the podcasters listening, when someone downloads your podcast, it goes into any app. And when someone clicks play in iOS, specifically in iOS, when someone clicks play, that data from a log standpoint looks exactly the same. So if a file is, let's use an example. If we see 80% of deliveries in the first 24 hours of a podcast released were completely downloaded, well, you would almost assume that was the app grabbing the file and pulling it over, right? Because it's automated. It happens. The app sees it. It pulls it. So that first 24 hours is going to be a huge number of downloaded deliveries. It basically were automated. Outside of that
that's full downloads.
Full downloads.
Correct.
It's
not this start-stop thing.
Right. And sprinkled in there may be some play, stop. Mm-hmm. So at least on the mobile app, and depending on the app, again, there's a lot of variables here, depending on the app that you're using, play, stop, when you do that, it's still a download. It's a progressive download, byte served download, and it chunks it ahead. So if you press, let's say you're at 50% and you press stop,
Mm-hmm.
you've probably already chunked out 60% or maybe 65% of the download.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so you can't say that's play data. There's no way to tell a media buyer, oh yeah, we had 85% of our episodes were either downloaded or made it to the 75% mark from a play status. You can't tell the media buyer it was played, but you can tell the media buyer that we know that an action was taken, 65, 70% of the file was delivered, the ad was in the first 25% of the show. We make a pretty high assumption that they listened to that ad. So, but you can't call it play. We don't call it play to our enterprise clients. We don't call that data play data. We call it partial download data. And, there's some things that can be taken away from that. And I've talked about this before. For example, one of our clients had I've told this example a dozen times, it had a show that was, when it was being actively played, at the 45-minute mark, they were losing, or 75% mark, which ended up being about the 45-minute mark, if you want to, kind of do a line graph to determine where in the show that fell. They were having some drop-off. They went in and looked at the episode. They said, oh, yep, we got a segment in here. We're probably losing people. They pulled the segment, and their downloads, completed download percentage went up. So, let's just remember we have files that, and what will often happen too, is what we see huge numbers on, and Angela's going to kill me, was if someone clicks start, and it plays for maybe, and they go stop. We see a lot of that. A lot. Start, stop. People inadvertently maybe hit play on something and stop.
Yeah.
And then, so this goes back to the IAB document. There has to be a threshold break on when you can count. And they're going to define that threshold break. And I'm not at liberty, I can't say it publicly now because it's still in review, but they're going to define that threshold break of how much of that media file has to be delivered before the counter can go dink, at least count once.
Yeah.
So it's
Todd,
still,
also let's throw in another concept here that correlates a little bit to what you're talking about. If you're talking about on the radio side, or on the streaming radio side, there's a concept of what's called time spent listening. And I think one of the things that comes up with this is that this concept of active listens, right, or active plays, which is termed, kind of gets linked up with that, because ultimately that's what the online radio folks want to get to, is a number that's time spent listening, because that's a metric that they've used for many years.
And unless you have an app that is calling home to mama, you can't get that in podcasting.
Yeah.
You can't get there. Can't get there from here at this point.
You can kind of imply that the file was downloaded up to a certain kind of range, right? But it's not an exact thing. I mean, with streaming servers,
right?
And this is a completely different protocol. We're talking about HTTP delivery, which is just like a website, right?
Right.
You're basically delivering like an image to a client software. But when you're talking about streaming, you're talking about a completely different protocol.
Absolutely.
It's like I can't remember what the protocol is, but it's like an ITPS or something.
Right.
I don't even remember what it is, but it's a completely different internet delivery protocol.
Absolutely.
And it streams that data. It's like it pulls that media file into a very thin string.
Yeah.
And it just like drips the data to the playback client.
Right.
And that's why you can get that level of granularity on delivery, because that server is counting every second of audio, and it's looked at from a second perspective, not a byte or bit.
And believe it or not, Rob, as long as streaming has been around, and streaming's been around before podcasting, they finally got their official spec measurement spec like a year and a half ago. So they didn't even have a spec until 18 months ago. They had it wasn't officiated or whatever word you want to use, but let's just be call
they really clarified it. The same group, the
right?
IEB
Same
group.
group.
Yeah, I saw that document was basically digital audio is what they call it.
Right. So we just need to make sure that what we're talking about here, and I don't know if they know how to talk the lingo. They haven't been very active in the space, the podcasting space. So, if their Omny app has data, has a way to call home to mama, yeah, they can measure that. Sure. But they're also, there's also there's the other challenge too is they have had to specifically limit the way that app procures the media that's going into it that's being played back, and because I'm sure unless they've done something really special with their player, that media is still being byte served, and they have to serve this media. It's unless it's all in the player. So they're saying they're taking a 30% sample of stuff, and it to me sounds like active plays is what they're measuring. But if they're going to say that they can do that for the podcast iOS app, that's nothing new. The active plays within the iOS podcasting app have been able to be broke out for a while, and matter of fact, I think we were the only ones, and maybe if they're doing it now, maybe they're the second ones, but I think we're the only ones that provide partial download data to our enterprise clients. And, people ask, why don't you provide this for regular podcasters? Well, it's server intensive.
It's a lot of data to store if you think about server logs.
You have to re-put it together. You have to, and you also have to look at, okay, let's say I'm driving to work, 20 minutes, I listen to, 20 minutes of a 60-minute program, I hit stop. This is something I haven't downloaded. And I come back later and I hit play again. You have to be able to come back 12, 15, 16 hours later and reshuffle that in. So, so that you only count it once, so you don't count it twice for the same person. So there's a whole bevy of things that have to happen in order, server-wise. And it's not like you're going to, you're not going to be able to see someone, Johnny starting the show on Monday and continuing playing on Friday. You're not going to be able to chunk that back together. That's going to be a 2 instead of a 1. But
yeah, I mean it's very server intensive, but it's also memory intensive too. I mean, storing log files. I've been involved in doing that kind of stuff too, and those log files can get really big, and it's a lot bigger a challenge than I think a lot of people realize to store all that usage data around what's happening in the podcast. Just imagine, how big your server logs are, keeping track of all the shows that you're keeping track of, and same with Spreaker, and I'm sure with Libsyn as well.
And really
years and years of data.
And one thing I keep watching, and this is something that's interesting, Rob, is everyone, and I went back and I did a little historical look. Everyone that's complaining about metrics are the companies of the streaming companies. The Tritons of the world. Those types of folks are the ones that have been largely complaining and saying that adoption of podcast advertising has been limited because of metrics. Well, I don't have those types of conversations with media buyers. Maybe they're talking to a whole different level of media buyer. I don't know, but we're not seeing media buyers having concern on metrics. So if this, sure, we'd love to have this play data. I'd love to have the ability, but we have to be careful what we wish for.
Yeah, I know. I've been saying that for a while too. It's like, once that file's downloaded, I'm not sure there's as big a likelihood that there's playback there and I think a lot of people in the space would like to see. We
know, Rob, if people aren't playing back because the automated download stops, and if
stops after three episodes
3 to 5
that weren't listened to.
Right. If they've left their iOS app in the default setting, and most people do. So it's so you have to look at a long term on a show, 90 days, 100 days. You got to look at
Yeah.
that trending data to see, because here's what can, or if no one was listening to the download, here's what would happen. A show would launch and they would have let's just use a brand new show. Let's say they got 1,000 new subscribers on day one or on episode one. And then if they gain very few new subscribers, they just, let's say onesie twosies, which most shows they gain, new subscribers in small spurts. They gain them a few numbers at a time. If they look at their growth curve, that's generally what happens for most shows. So if you have this big inrush at the beginning, which a lot of shows do, if the people aren't listening after 3 to 5 episodes, the trending data will dive.
Mm-hmm.
It should dive, And if you're a new podcaster and your show's not diving after 3 to 5 episodes, and you're getting a fair percentage of folks that are tuned in via iOS, specifically the podcast iOS app, you're going to see where that level is over time. And the only way you can tell it is over time. You can't tell on a show-to-show basis. But, I still bill on what a show delivers individually. I plan on what they're averaging. So it's, but, there's a way to tell the story if you have the trending data and willing to, put that metric in. But I think Omny's bit off more than they can chew here, and this is the reason why they don't want to. They're saying, well, we've got technology here, secret technology we've designed, and we don't want Blueberry, and we don't want Libsyn, and we don't want other people to steal our glory. Well,
that's really not what's going on here. Yeah.
No, because I don't think they've done anything new.
Yeah. Well, because there isn't really anything new to do that you can do. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The data just isn't there for you to track something. And they weren't specific that they were tracking the after download plays.
No, they didn't say.
No. They didn't say anything about that. So we're kind of just assuming that maybe that's what they're tracking, and there's a little bit of wishful thinking that we can get access to that data. But really, the only way you can get access to that data is to somehow have a plugin that plugs into the iTunes or podcasting client app that tracks that stuff.
When they declare a breakthrough in Apple Podcast data,
yeah,
is it a lack of them knowing what is currently available in the space? Did they make that statement out of just not knowing and thinking they were first?
Well, that's probably likely.
But
they're a pretty new company, Todd, and I don't see them engaging in the community at any level at this point. And maybe this is a pathway for them to participate more in the community.
They've just gotten 30 minutes of free publicity.
Yes, they have. So, which is fine. They're doing some cool stuff. I mean, a lot of what they're doing is web-based audio production.
Right.
A lot of it's a platform that I think appeals to radio.
Oh, they come from radio. If I remember correctly, they came from a radio production background. Yeah.
And so their tools are very much catered to that type of show production.
Mm-hmm.
But they've done a nice job at their tools. And now they're making a little bit of a splash in the podcasting space. So that's all right.
So, I've, this is and I want to take this back to the Rain folks. If you guys are listening, please, you need to have some counter.
Some vetting.
Maybe not. This was a Rain presented webinar.
Yeah.
And, they bear some responsibility in making sure that what's being said is maybe it was a reporter that took the information from the webinar, but if there's going to be a webinar where people are making claims like this, then there needs to be some people with knowledge on how metrics work that participate.
Yeah.
It
was so unclear what they were actually doing here in any of the communications that I read.
Yeah.
That should have been a little bit of a red flag to anybody that was presenting this information. It just wasn't clear what they were doing. But, like you said, it's gotten a lot of people talking about it in the space, and I'm not sure what that really means. I mean, other than we're just trying to make sure that what's out there is accurate and truthful, and that's our goal here. And I know that's what yours is too.
Yeah.
And so when this new IAB document comes out, and Todd, I think there's probably a little bit of a different perception of the intention of the IAB document, but maybe there's a chance that some of these things that come up with new people that come into the podcasting space will be less likely to happen.
Well,
because
I don't know if that'll happen. It's a standards measurement guideline standards document. So
yeah, but it also talks about a little bit of what's possible, right?
Right.
As far as
what is and what isn't. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I think the thing that really bothers me, and it's a very bad thing for a company to say, but they actually said Apple's walled garden platforms is making the tech titans' podcast consumption data exceedingly difficult to come by. That's false. That's utterly false.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
No, the only data that's not there is the downloaded playback data.
Yeah.
And there's an exceedingly amount of... You're delivering the damn file.
Well, you're tracking even that delivery, right?
Right.
The playback part of it is what the question mark is. It's not the delivery of the media file to a listener.
Apple's very clear, and when the app or the system comes to reach out and grab a file, they're not trying to obscure or hide. They have user agents. Yeah, come on. Quit using. What that statement does, in my opinion, it shows ignorance of the space, and it also shows that a media buyer is going to read that, and they're going to say, "Oh man, this podcasting stuff is too hard."
Yeah,
they've actually trying to by trying to say they have something special, and at the same time dogging Apple, and clearly, in my opinion, maybe not having an exact idea on what's really capable in the space, they hurt the space. And I'm personally, that's where I just get ballistic at these companies that make statements like this.
Yeah.
And, and we're, me, you, Rob Walsh, we're about the only ones that call these people out.
And I think to some degree we get a little bit of a black eye.
Yes, we do. We get beat up for it.
Yeah.
But here they are, they're dogging the space. It just pisses me off. Podcasters need to start, listen, podcasters, when people start saying this stuff, you need to stand up.
And some are. So, and I think that's been a common theme, and that's what we try and do with this show too. And I think it makes it difficult for some people to come on our show and be a guest.
Well, the tone would be much different if they would have come on.
Oh, definitely.
We have nothing else to go by but our assumptions. We've asked for clarifications, and they've refused to give it.
Yeah.
But when you make statements like this, bold statements, that you have a breakthrough, then you better damn well be ready to talk about it.
Yeah.
We don't want to know.
You run the risk of a spin up like this, right?
And you don't have to have you don't have to tell us the tech. You don't have to tell us how.
Just tell us what it is that you're tracking.
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
And believe me,
I don't even know what it is that they're tracking. They just threw out a 30% of Apple's podcast usage, and it's like, okay, well, what does that mean?
Well, to me, that means active plays.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not downloads, because downloads is 70% of it, right?
So,
yeah.
And we live in podcasting was born and I think we have to continue to understand this and embrace it. When in 2004, when podcasting got kicked off, it was born by the ability, and let me just grab this thing. It was born by the ability to download podcast media in devices that don't even exist anymore. There's a little MP3 player.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those.
All right. And I keep this over here as a reminder to me where we came from. And there's an iPod back behind. If you look directly behind me, there's an iPod on the shelf back there.
Yep.
You know, we took this media with us. This was the evolution of carrying the media with us. We didn't have these big, beautiful iPhone 6s to do whatever, to be able to have a computer in our hands. We didn't have that. And this media to this day has lived as a walk-away media or walk-around media. We carry the media in our pocket, and we listen to it like we listen to our DVRs when we're watching TV at home. It's still that space.
It's portable media is what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is what made it so evolutionary, and we can't forget that. Things have changed because everyone can get YouTube or whatever on their mobile phones, no matter where they're at now. That didn't exist when this place started.
Yeah.
But because of the consumption habits we've ingrained over the past 12 years, it's still that space.
And then, I mean, if you want to talk a little bit about the history, I mean, the roots of this come out of streaming.
Right.
I mean, if I think back to when I started doing an online show, I had streaming media servers. I had Windows streaming servers. I had real streaming servers. A lot of people in the space don't even know that those things even existed.
They still exist.
Yeah, that's true. Not used quite as much as they used to be, but I used to get most of my audience off of streaming back in the early days, back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And the whole reason that we evolved like this was people, like you said, wanted to take their media with them because a lot of the streaming was happening in desktop computers.
Right. There was no way to.
Yep.
Right.
So you had to do it only at your desk or in the office.
Yep.
And people wanted to listen to music, and they wanted to listen to other media while they were out on a run or in the gym or on the bus, because people, spend a lot of time in their cars, on buses and airplanes and things like that. And it's like, well, download it and you can listen to what you want to listen to anywhere you want to listen to it. And that's the power of what podcasting has been all about. And I think that these streaming radio guys, they don't really understand the roots of it. They take what they understand, which is the online radio part, and then they want to make this part of what they're doing. And it's because podcasting is cool and streaming radio isn't. I hate to say it.
Rob, let's just really look at what has evolved. And I go back to when I started running a bulletin board in 1987, 88 time frame. So then, the internet didn't exist. They existed for scientists, but for the average Joe, we had no clue. So we were dialing in initial days, 1200, 2400 baud, 9600 baud, 56K, finally at the peak. We were dialing into a local bulletin board, fighting to get in, and getting on message boards and getting access to media files that you waited to download to your local computer. Then
it took forever to get them too, probably, right?
And how we distributed them was through a mesh network of nodes and hubs, and basically the guys with the big fat connection fed it to the next guy with a little slower connection, who fed it to the guys with the real slow. It was and we had regions, and it was something called FidoNet. That's how we delivered. That's how bulletin boards shared. I was a major hub in a Zone 6 hub for many years, and took care of all of Asia. And we went to.
So is that like an early days of like a BitTorrent network of some sort?
Well,
it's not exactly the same thing.
It wasn't BitTorrent. I would 2:00 in the morning. I would dial into a bulletin board in Chicago,
get the
and
file and
well,
then redistribute it? Is that what you would do?
for 3 or 4 hours, incur long distance fees. 3 or 4 hours, not minutes.
Yeah.
Incur long distance fees to pull the media from Chicago, get it on my system, repackage it, and then have bundles ready for about 100 different boards that would come into my site. Grab those media files, spend 3 or 4 hours downloading the packets, putting into them systems, and then people could then get access to it individually. So it was not fast. It was like a message would typically be a 24-hour turnaround. You get a message from maybe here to the East Coast and back, it would be 24 hours. And later on, it got faster as the modems got faster. And then when we went on the internet, oh my God, we actually could transfer in minutes what used to take hours. And that's when, the BBS stuff just, fell off a cliff, because instead of dialing into your local bulletin board at 56K, you dialed into your local internet service provider at 56K, and 1,000 people could be online at a time. And, that's when the revolution of the internet started. And so what did we do then, Rob? We were on websites, right?
Yeah. And we were all bandwidth starved back then.
Right.
Too. And
Still.
That was another reason why streaming was popular back then, was because people had 28.8 modems, and most people were streaming their audio at 18K or 20K or something like that to get under that 28.8 modem, which is 28K is what you were getting on the bandwidth. You had to stream below what people were capable of getting in their computers, which was very slow back then.
When I lived in Lexington Park, Maryland, when I was still in the Navy, my house, I only had a dial-in. There was no cable modem in the home. This was 90, would have been like 95, 96, I think. And but and I actually literally rented a closet in an internet service provider's office. I mean, when I went into the room, I had to sit in the chair and roll into the closet, and I had a computer screen and monitors and modems and everything else. I was hot shit. I had a 10 meg line.
Wow, that was huge back then.
Connected to the internet service provider's main connection. So I was big dog because I could.
Yeah,
and I was still pulling media from satellite feeds. So that that tells you we weren't even moving, because it cost me to move gigabits. And so when I moved to Hawaii in '97, it was the first time that I had a cable modem. So we're not even, at least for me, I'm not even 20 years with a cable modem. So it took us from '97 till 2004 to figure out, hey, we can deliver this media to this little MP, or Adam Curry did. Figured out we can deliver media from a website to a media player, iPod or a little MP3 player, and we had to sync it in the middle of the night, because we were all still bandwidth starved. We had people that were still dialing in.
Yeah.
We still have people that are, well, I don't know, most people aren't dialing in. They used to have DSL now in most of the country, but it was amazing to go into internet service provider and see a rack of 10,000 modems. I have pictures somewhere of racks of just modems, USR. But so we're going back to, we went full circle here. This podcasting is we take it with us medium, and we can't forget that.
And the smartphone has changed.
Yeah.
Has taken it to where its ultimate destination was, and for many years, you and I both were seeing that trend line moving towards.
Right.
But podcasting, actually, the technology or the function or the user experience of podcasting was around before podcasting. I mean, I had my show on podcasting like platforms many years before podcasting started. There were early companies that were playing around with it. I mean, one of them was Microsoft. They actually had a podcast platform before podcasting started. Actually, they had it in 2003 and 4. My radio show was on. It was called Sync and Go, and it worked with Windows XP and the Pocket PC at the time. There was client software on both sides. So you loaded a little piece of client software like iTunes on your Windows PC, and you loaded a little app on your Pocket PC. And when you docked your Pocket PC, it transferred the video and audio files to your Pocket PC automatically based on your subscriptions. The only difference was back then is that Microsoft only had 13 content providers in the ecosystem that was on Windows XP. I happened to be one of them, and I got paid to every media file, every show media file that got delivered to a Pocket PC. Microsoft paid me for that. So I got like 25 cents per download. Yeah, and
that can that come back?
I know. Wouldn't that be nice? But that was like 2 or 3 years before podcasting started.
Right.
And what's ironic about it is that right as podcasting was getting off the ground in 2005 was when Microsoft killed Sync and Go.
I had forgot about Sync and Go.
Yeah. But it actually had, the NBC Nightly News video in it. It had shows from Forbes magazine. It had my audio show, so it had audio and video, just like podcasting today. And I encouraged the company back then to launch it on the Windows smartphone that they were working on. They didn't want to do it at the time because they didn't see a big enough market for it. So it's just ironic that I was working with them on that, and then I wound up working on Zune. But
yeah, but I just the wishful thinking, going back to the genesis of this whole discussion this morning, is that I don't think Apple is going to ever, and they might. If they give the play data back, they're going to give it to it in the podcast connects.apple.com dashboard. That's the only place that they will ever give it. I don't think they will ever make that data available to third parties like us, which is fine. If the podcasters can go into the Podcast Connects dashboard and get that download play data, that's true. It would be huge.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that's a good point, Todd. I think that Apple would probably give it individually to the content provider.
Right.
But they wouldn't give it to Spreaker or Blueberry or Libsyn.
And if they did, I'm sure there would be lots of agreements. The podcaster would have to agree to send the data, and they're not just going to do that. And if Apple implemented, and again, Apple has not said they're going to do this. This is me. This is my speculation and hypothesis. And let me be very clear: they have never indicated anything like that.
Yep.
All right. So I don't have any.
Ground.
I don't have any insider information. Nothing.
Yeah.
Pete Todd said Apple's going to. But that's where they would put it. So. And that's what I suspected when they launched the podcastconnects.apple.com website. That's what I suspected they were going to do.
Yeah, and it would make sense that they would do that, right? And do it there. I think it makes a lot of sense.
But Rob, what's the potential that Apple doesn't track that data? What do you think? And do you think that they, first of all, Apple's not monetizing podcast.
That's actually a really good point, Todd. That they may not even be putting a hook on that for the simple reason is that maybe there's not a lot of need for it. I know when I was working on Zune at Microsoft, we didn't really track that data because honestly, if we did, it was just a huge amount of server logs and data that would have to be managed and processed. Apple just may not have decided that it was worth to track that stuff.
If I'm a manager in that division, and of course, if I worked for Apple, we'd have that data, right? I'm a junkie. I would want that.
Oh yeah.
But then again, it's about resources too. They got a lot of stuff going on. And the podcast team's relatively small, even at Apple.
Yeah, and then even if they are tracking it, they're only tracking it for internal use.
Right.
Right. Think about it. They're not delivering it to anybody externally.
Right.
So where's the value in that?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's I'm sure they're getting click action because that, on playback, right?
Do they?
But is the click well, I would, yeah. I mean, they're tracking subscriptions, so we know that, right?
But they've never ever said never have ever said that.
Well, but if you look at their dashboards for their network
that's true.
pages,
that's true.
They are tracking downloads and they are tracking what they call streams. So Apple is reporting some usage data to
network partners,
specific partners, network partners that have large groups of shows. I've had access. I've got multiple accounts.
Me too.
That I've had access to over the years, and there is pretty detailed data around downloads. But there.
But that data is in graphic form. There's nothing you can export. So
but count numbers are in there.
Yeah.
Though. And they do break out streams from downloads.
Right.
I'm not entirely sure. They're not really 100% clear on what the action of the user is that qualifies as a stream, but I'm assuming it's just clicking the play button. So we've always just assumed that. And then the whole download piece would be more just a manual download request or a subscription. So we have had that data for a long time. It's like we keep saying, the piece that's missing is we don't have playback of completed downloaded files that are on people's computers.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not stressed about it. I get there. There's two ways to skin a cat, and
I don't really want to know the data actually.
Well, I see it in the trending. I see it in the trending data. I'm not worried about the downloads. I don't even want to use this word. I have a story for that.
Yeah, sure.
Presentation story.
Sure.
So for me, it's a moot point. This is not rocket science. It's just a little math.
Well, to many in the space, I think it is.
Well, if you're a streaming company, because here's what they want. They hate the download. They hate it. If they
because it's different than how they typically deliver their media content. It forces them to do something different that they really don't want to do.
Yeah,
is what it really comes down to. I think
it's
and that's okay. I mean,
so Omny, you had your chance. You could have come on.
And it's okay you didn't.
Yeah, it's okay you didn't. We'll wait.
We'll just talk about it anyway.
And we'll see what you say next. But I think if you're listening, it would be very wise of you to clarify exactly what you're measuring. And then if you've made a breakthrough and you can track download data, you can track plays from the actual files that have been downloaded, then I will say bravo to you. On the Podcast iOS app, not your app.
Exactly.
If you can track play data, either in iTunes or in the Podcast iOS app, bravo to you. And I will eat humble pie. And
I'm sure Apple would be really thrilled to have that news as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
No comment.
We don't have to go too far into that path, but yeah.
And I don't know if Apple would say anything.
I don't think they would either, but I'm sure they'd have a few engineers looking.
Yes. So everyone stand down, calm down. But it's just like anything else. It's a shiny object. Oh, they can do that.
Yeah.
Well, let's go.
Hey, it's like putting out a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Unless you kind of diffuse the the tech challenge around it, you're going to have people, speculating and shooting it down.
Right.
Right. So.
All right. So there is other stuff in the news.
Is there?
Just a few things, yes. And we spent an hour on that. So.
Wow.
Yeah. Hey, people are. Well, you told me about this. It's actually I didn't even read the website, but or in podcasternews.com. You were talking about car talk before we started the show, right?
Yeah.
So what's the story there, Rob? I haven't been following this. I'm not a car guy.
I don't know that it's necessarily a big podcasting topic, but it's kind of an interesting move that National Public Radio, which actually Car Talk is not owned by National Public Radio. It's been owned by the two guys that did Car Talk.
Yeah.
And actually one of the two guys passed away a couple of years ago. And so, but that show has lived on, but it's lived on in repeats.
Oh, I see.
And so I guess they're finally deciding to shut it down in 2017. So the repeats will no longer be repeats. It'll be done finally.
Did you hear that presidential nominee Hillary Clinton has a podcast?
Oh, of course.
Did you listen?
I did.
How was it?
I thought she did a good job with it. I was thinking, it'd be good if both those candidates did this kind of stuff.
I can't stand to listen to her talk. She just makes my teeth rattle. It's like listening to screeches on a chalkboard. So,
well, I'm not honestly. I'm not really thrilled about listening to any of them.
Actually,
but it's, we all need to take an interest in that and vote.
And I think that. Well, I'm glad she did a good job with it. I didn't know if it was just going to end up being a big political, if it was just another campaign speech or if they actually did an actual show or.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, good.
So I think it's good. She's able to talk and kind of share her humanness.
Did she get in the new and noteworthy?
She did. Actually, she got in the flow area of iTunes as well. So,
well,
right?
Of course, you would expect that.
Yeah. So there's a constant, flow of new shows that are coming into the medium from big companies and small. But I've been seeing an uptick in what's called branded podcasts, shows that are being produced by producers that are coming out, oftentimes coming out of public radio, and going in and doing private development of programs for big companies.
Though, when it goes, Rob, going back to the political talk, if I was a politician, of course, I've lived, breathed podcasting for years, but why would you not have a podcast? It seems to me that would be your one opportunity to, kind of be real. If a politician can ever be real, I don't know if they can, if it's even possible. But
yeah, well, they're under so much scrutiny that it's hard to think that they can be that genuine. I think Trump has tried to do that, and he's
they forced
at times blown up in his face.
Yeah, so. Well, they forced him to go on prompter.
I know, I've noticed that, and he was early on. He was really kind of not doing a good job with it.
So it's fun, and it's been a very entertaining political season, if nothing else.
It has. Kind of scary at the same time.
Oh, again, it's been entertaining. I'll just leave it at that. I think it's going to be very entertaining whoever gets it. Doesn't matter who gets elected. It's going to be very entertaining for the next 4 years. And definitely both those candidates have given people a lot of stuff. The political shows should be just like salivating at the mouth, because if it's Trump, then they can go after his blunders, and if it's Hillary, then they can go after her criminality. Either way, they win.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Either way, they win. So it's they
always have have a lot to talk about on those cable news channels, don't they?
Well, the political podcast, if you've listened to any political podcast,
Yeah.
they beat any CNN. Because it's well, I don't even know if that there's no bias anymore. It's all biased. Actually, most television people become podcasters there with biased commentary. The Blizzard Entertainment has released the Tomb of Sargeras audio drama, so that's something that's new. And I don't even know what, if you're a World of Warcraft player, a WoW player. I've got a Legend player in my house. You'll know what this is. But this audio drama is intended to serve as a setup for players as they move from the current expansion to the new one. And then, of course, a variety of Pokemon Go podcasts have launched.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Well, Niantic had a number of Ingress podcasts. As a matter of fact, I own the domain, I think, ingresspodcast.com. Never did a show about it. But so if someone got out there and bought their domain names early enough, let me see who got the best one. See, these guys had huge opportunities. Pokemon shows had huge opportunity to. None of them did bought a domain that. See, none of these shows I'm looking at that are in the article actually utilize smart SEO for their game. You know why? If you're going to launch a podcast, and this is a good topic, and you're going to do a topic-specific podcast, you better buy a domain that will help you in the search results. Because I guarantee you, if someone had bought an Pokemon Go podcast or something to that effect, they really could have, they may have also gotten a takedown notice. So if you can pick a domain name or get the domain name around your topic, it really, Geek News Central podcast. People search for it's, I win every time in the search results.
Yep.
Same thing with new media show. So it's you gotta pick your domain wisely.
Hey Todd, we Spreaker did a deal with a music kind of source company that gives access to download global rights and streaming rights for 30,000 music tracks on our platform.
Is this the company out of UK? Or
yeah. And for $75 a year, you have access to the 30,000 music tracks that you can use for intros, exits, music beds, all this kind of stuff in downloadable files. And it's not exclusive just to Spreaker platform content creators. You can just go in and create an account through Spreaker and get access to all those music tracks and actually use very high quality music in your podcast.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I've been going to the route of thinking about not having a bumper in the beginning of my show.
Yeah, I heard you say that. That was really, really interesting. Are you thinking about maybe teasing the show a little bit more up front? Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. There's another reason for it, too. And it's stuff that we've got cooking at Raw Voice. So I'll be able to expand more later. But
okay.
Yeah, it's about promotion for sure.
Gotcha.
So we'll see what goes, and I'm torn too because I love my intro. It kind of gets me like you play your show intro and it's like your go-go juice.
Yeah, I try and really minimize that stuff now. I don't know about. I mean, it sounds like that may be a little bit about what you're maybe talking about here.
And mine's like 36 seconds.
That's a little long.
But it tells a story, So.
Oh, I know it does.
Yeah.
No, that's totally what it does. But you've got a lot of regular listeners too, right? That know you.
Yeah.
Pretty deep depth.
But it's for the new folks.
Yeah, exactly. There was some way to deliver that just to new folks.
Yeah.
And not to your existing subscribers or users that have been listening to you for 12 years.
Yep.
There would be an advantage to them
Well,
for that.
That's an interesting thought there, Rob.
That's what this show's all about. It's coming
Yes.
up with interesting
So
thoughts.
maybe what you do is you, if you're doing live like we do, you play the intro during live, but on the podcast you don't play that during you don't include it in the download file.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, interesting idea.
But there's also a lot of new people too that come into the podcast too.
Yeah, that's
or
true.
Play off of a player.
Got a lot of
on
people
a web page.
Yeah. Had a lot of people in and out of the chat room. Hi Nelson, hi Gary, hey David, hey Michael. Guys, welcome in the Facebook chat. Thanks so much for being here today.
But Todd, I also wanted to talk a little bit about dynamic ad insertion.
Oh, something
stuff.
new?
No, well, I don't know about new, but I know that we've talked about it quite a bit in the past. But I just think that we're coming into a time when I think we've said that it's overinflated expectation that a lot of networks and platforms want to have that as a potential tool in their toolkit.
Yep.
But I would say that there may be some things brewing in the podcasting space that maybe challenge that assumption. That it's something that I don't know how to say this. I can't really talk about it in great detail, and you may be under the same situation. But there are platforms out there that are rehosting files, right?
Right.
And taking snapshots of media files and redistributing them, right? So as you think about dynamic insertion, the whole concept of that is being able to deliver from one source, right, server source, to all of the aggregators and all of the players to be able to serve dynamically inserted advertising. Or you don't even have to run advertising in this dynamic insertion stuff. You can actually build a show,
right?
Maybe build a different show for different users, and build a slightly different show for geo-targeting, or to who knows what the potential of dynamic insertion can be if you look into the future,
right?
But there is a growth of platforms that are happening here that are not playing nice in this space, because maybe they want to get into the dynamic ad insertion, but they're an aggregator platform, right? Because they have plans for monetization of the content as well. So there may be platforms out there in the future that will want to get a copy of your show that doesn't have any advertising in it. And
not happening.
They will insert the advertising.
Nope, not happening.
I don't know. I think that
not happening. And give me a cut and take my cut? No, not a chance in hell.
No, they would still do a rev share.
But it's taking out my advertiser. No, there's no way.
Yeah, I mean it's. I think that there's some challenges on that coming, and that's why I raised this topic. Is that the ecosystem that we have today? It is going to be challenged here in the future.
So if you tell a podcaster, the only way you can have your audio on my platform is take your advertising out, I'm going to stick my advertising in, and I'm going to give you a rev share where I could have had 100% of the ad revenue of my ad being in their platform, they can kiss my ass. It's
coming.
Kiss.
Yeah.
It's not happening. Do they fully understand what they? Oh no, it's hard.
I know. It's a slippery slope here of what's happening.
It's a slippery slope. It is the suits are coming in and trying to take money out of podcasters' pockets.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yes, that's what it is. You tell a podcaster the only way you get your show on this platform is if you take our advertising and take yours out. It'll be a cold day in hell. I'll be like, I don't need your platform. I have my own .com. I have my own brand. I have my own location. No, I will forgo being on your platform. No way. But Todd,
if that platform was huge, right, had lots of listeners on it, and they just wanted a chunk of the advertising revenue based on their delivery of your media file, you don't have to pay for the bandwidth or anything.
There's going to be a revolt. I'll pay for the bandwidth. Just link to my media file. There's going to be a revolt.
There's platforms that are already moving into this space that are rehosting, right? So
okay, they're rehosting. They rehost my media with my permission. I choose to allow them to rehost my media.
Mm-hmm.
I can so choose to not rehost my media with that platform. And no platform is delivering significant numbers to even make me even want to consider doing that. Mm-hmm. There is no player today that is doing enough volume that would make me consider that.
And Todd, I believe that this whole topic is related to the ART19 announcement that they're going to have API feeds into platforms.
I don't care. So
I know,
what?
but I'm just this is something that's going to come up over the next couple of years, more and more. That there's going to be people in this space that are going to want to change the medium.
They're trying to force their way into our pockets. Podcasters, you need to be aware here. What's coming? I've said it again and again.
That's why I raise it, because I can hear it coming.
I've said it again and again and again. The suits are coming. The suits are coming. The suits are coming, and they want to take money out of your pocket. Now, if you don't have any advertising in your show, what's the big deal? Then you can take the advertising. But if you have an advertiser, there's no way they can, that I can be. You look at my sponsor, GoDaddy. My compensation with GoDaddy feeds my family, keeps my lights on, makes my car payment, makes my house payment, allows me to do what I do. And then they're going to tell me, take your advertiser out. And I'm like, okay, you have to give me equal amount of compensation. Equal or greater. And then guess what I have to do? Then I have to go back to GoDaddy and say, well, my numbers, I'm going to have to renegotiate my advertising deal with GoDaddy because I'm not going to be able to deliver as much.
It doesn't necessarily have to play out like that.
Well, that's what it's going to play out. It's going to play out if they make us pull out our advertising.
Yeah, I mean, it could play out, or the potential, maybe you just make a little less money off of the other distribution. Or a certain segment of your distribution, you make a little less money, but you can still get that advertiser.
Yeah, well, whoever's if ART19 is putting these types of thoughts into companies' minds, then ART19 is going to be a short-lived group.
Yeah. I don't think it's necessarily coming from ART19. I think they're reacting to what they hear in the market. And this isn't a topic that's being talked about very much, and I think we have to be careful because some of this stuff is NDA stuff.
I'm not under any NDA.
but it's also I'm trying to be careful about it, but it needs to be something that the industry knows that it has the potential of happening, and we just need to be aware of it and look for signs when it starts to happen. And how are we going to react to it? How are we going to think about the space in a different way if we have to?
We don't have to do anything. It's our space.
Yeah, but there's new people coming in that are taking a chunk of it.
So what? It's our space. We don't have to. That's the key here.
Okay. When you use the term "our," are you talking about individually?
Yeah, it's our space as a community. 300,000 podcasters. It's our space. Mm-hmm. We create the content. We control the distribution. These companies go nowhere without distribution from the podcasters, without permission for them to take this content and redistribute it.
I mean, we have seen this before.
Oh, yes, we have.
Yeah.
And that company went out of business.
Well, not necessarily. I think the company that comes to my mind is Stitcher.
Right.
They got beat up early on for rehosting.
Yep.
And that's where this issue comes from, right? Is the rehosting side.
Well, there's a limited number of rehosters. There's Spotify, Google, Stitcher. Actually, you can tell Stitcher you don't want them to rehost. You can actually tell them to take your original feed.
Yeah.
So Apple doesn't rehost. TuneIn doesn't rehost. They link directly. So these big, if it's Google that's going to do this, boy, it's not going to end well. They're not delivering enough volume at this point to even try to attempt to do this.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough volume. I could leave Google Play traffic on the floor at this point, and it would make nary a dent.
But Todd, let's speculate, right? Maybe you see some of these bigger players try and do this. Could that inspire Apple?
Well, I don't know. I don't think Apple would do that, to be honest with you. Apple's a multi-billion-dollar company. They think in very big round zero numbers. The podcasting space is not a billion-dollar advertising space. Yeah. So,
and specifically, Apple is not an advertising.
And can you imagine the outrage by the listeners? Here you're going to take a podcaster's ad spot out and then inject a Geico ad that is a pre-produced spot. There will be revolt. There will be a revolt of listeners. Listeners will be like, "What is this shit?" They don't. They need to think this through on what they're thinking about doing. Where I have to take someone else's advertising and you're going to inject some crap that they're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question, Todd. I think is there a place for host reads in this type of situation? It's hard to think that there is.
No,
I mean, unless it's pre-produced host reads.
No way. They would never, not at scale. They can't scale that.
Really? They can't scale it? I mean, with technology?
The management of it would be, okay, if you're a big platform and you want 30, 40, 50,000 podcasters to do host-read ad spots going into a system that will specifically inject in their system, no way. Never.
You could pre-produce that and make it available in your platform, right? In an ad injection system that you control as a podcaster, and then you just upload that host read into another platform that does the dynamic insertion.
Good luck.
You
good
could,
luck.
right? I'm just trying to say, well, how could you do it?
Yeah. For there better be tens of 20s of 25 or 30% of market share. For if you're talking about a player that has 1% or 2% of market share.
Well, but some of these bigger platforms have pretty big thoughts of what they can do at scale too.
Okay,
so
well. But the problem is they're not proving by delivering audience now.
Yeah.
They have to deliver audience. And if they're not delivering audience, it's moot point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that content that advertising is going to have to coexist. They're going to have to they're going to have to demand letter me to remove my advertising from my show.
Yeah.
And many folks have Creative Commons licenses on their show that have specific restrictions in rebuilding files.
Mm-hmm. Todd, I also want to just say one other thing on this topic, because I've been concerned about this issue for many, many months. This isn't something new necessarily. This whole concern about rehosting and then other platforms getting involved in the dynamic insertion or selling advertising. I mean, this has been a danger zone / view of an opportunity in the future in this medium for a long time that I've been concerned about. So I just don't want people to think that somehow I'm breaking news here, because I'm not.
Yeah.
Or I'm sharing something that's proprietary to somebody,
Right.
because it's not.
Okay.
These are my ideas and my concerns that go way back, far beyond any of these other things that may be happening in the space right now.
I just, I think as a podcaster first and a business owner second.
Yeah.
If someone tries to do that, Rob, I'm going to be honest with you. You think
You think what happened with Omny is just a blip on the radar, right? Is that what you're telling me?
Oh. Go ahead.
Well,
No,
Todd,
it's
going to make for some great new media shows in the future.
Podcasters won't stand for it, Rob. They won't. They won't stand for it. Anyone that's listening right now, would you stand for a company asking you to remove your advertising so they could inject theirs and then pay you a percentage where you were getting 100% before and now you're going to get a percentage? Would you stand for that? If you can, those of you that are listening, I really want to hear from you, and I want you to.
Pandora's box.
You got my blood pressure up, Rob.
Well, Todd, you're a perfect candidate for this. It's like, people expect this from you. Because you're the moral compass of the podcasting space.
Don't say that, please. But no, I'm a podcaster.
I know you are.
Yeah. I'm it's and of course the CPMs will be fantastic on those types of deals. You'll get $3 maybe.
Hey, I'll be able to buy a cup of coffee. That's all I need. And I understand they see dollar signs, but at what impact? Well, I mean, Todd, let's say that in 10 years, radio is at 50% of what they are now, and on demand is at 50% of what it is. I mean, of what radio is today, which means that we've continued to grow and we've eroded that audience for radio. There's a potential that this could be a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Here's, my podcast is a little bit different than a lot of podcasts. I don't rely on any third-party platform to allow for my success or failure. If Apple went and shut down podcasting tomorrow, sure, it would hurt. But my audience would know where to go to get the show. They would know which website to come to, and we would make it work. And there would be a setback, yes. But in the end, my show resides on my site, at my brand, and I've built my podcast, and my audience knows where it's at. The people that would really be impacted. And this is something for podcasters. This goes back to Todd's ongoing beat the drum of have your own property. If you're on a third party, if you have just a SoundCloud page, or you have just only a Libsyn page, or if you have just a Podbean page, you're setting your show up for a significant negative impact if things like what Rob you have just said affects the space. Because most podcasters don't tell their listeners to go to such and such.podbean.com or such and such.libsyn.com. They say go to iTunes to get my show. Yeah. I say subscribe on iTunes, but come to my site to do it. Don't go. I don't tell them to go search for my show on iTunes. That's not the message I put forth.
Yeah. Todd, I heard you in your, I think it was your most recent Geek News Central podcast where you said that you're getting heard on, or you're trying to drive your audience over to the Echo from Amazon.
I've been given it's an option. I tell them that's an option to I basically Well, let me open up my little script that I have.
Can you just say Geek News Central podcast into Echo and it pulls it up?
Well, what you have to say is, okay, when I'm telling my listeners where to get the show, I say you watch the show on the Roku, on the Tech Podcast channel. You can listen on Apple TV. You listen or watch on Apple TV. You can listen on the Amazon Echo by telling Alexa to play the latest edition of, and then I have to say this show's name, because if I say Alexa, play, and if anyone's listening on Alexa, this is going to, Alexa, play the latest edition of the Beep, 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 and Alexa will play the show. So I have to say, tell them to play, Alexa, play the latest edition of the, and then the show name. As it's
so, yeah, okay. So I talked to the Amazon folks, and they told me that there's two ways of getting in the platform.
Right.
There's
Tune in.
what's called skills, which is more of a specific content provider reference pathway to get into it. So you could set up your own skill as a podcaster in the platform. Then there's what's called it's kind of a third-party server-side app experience, right? So that would be like a TuneIn app or a Spreaker app or and you could conceivably just say like TuneIn Geek News Central.
Actually, Alexa's smart enough that it just looks at TuneIn first right now.
So it first looks at the skills.
It looks at TuneIn, yeah.
Yeah. So TuneIn is an app, a client-side app that runs at the server side that is accessible by its name reference.
Right, by Alexa. And you don't have to use the name reference. You don't have to say TuneIn. You just say, Alexa, play the latest edition of the show. And if you're in TuneIn, Alexa's smart enough to go look there.
Okay. But there's going to be multiple platforms that are going to have server-side clients.
Well, I will just say that it will be no problem finding podcast in Amazon in the near future.
Okay.
Doesn't matter what platform you're on.
I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. I think where it's going to get where it's going to get interesting on the third party server side kind of platform application side is what additional functions and features can Echo offer to a user that uses, let's say, a TuneIn. So they say, Alexa, TuneIn, that activates the client app at the server side for TuneIn or whatever platform that's out there, that a Spotify or whatever, and that would activate a whole nother tool set of capabilities.
I think ultimately what you will see is that Alexa's just going to know where to get the show. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but there is going to be a question mark of if there's if the show is available in multiple server-side platforms, right? Then Alexa's going to have to decide what platform is the priority that they're going to access for you, the user. So if you're a Spotify user, right, you're going to want to probably specify where you want to get it from.
I think the average listener will not care. They just want to get the show. They don't care how it gets it. I don't think natively, as a user, a heavy user of Alexa, you just talk to it naturally. You don't tell it to go to TuneIn. You just tell Alexa what to do, and Alexa, you're right. There will be, Alexa, play Geek News Central from, whatever platform. And then if it has some special features, great. But I think the average person is not going to care. They want to say something. It's okay. What do I do? Alexa, play. What do I do before I go to bed? Alexa, play jazz, and it just plays jazz. And I say, Alexa, in 20 minutes, stop playing, and it does.
Well, I know that they're working on having the capability of, you're going to be able to go into those platforms like a Spotify or whatever and set up your preferences. of your playlists and
Right.
the types of genres that you like to listen to that would then be turned on and enabled in Alexa for using Spotify on Alexa or TuneIn or whatever platform. There's going to be configurational things that can be done that will be specific to what you want to do.
Yeah.
Playlists is probably a good one, right?
Mm-hmm.
A good example, your favorites list, things like that could be more easily accessed across all sorts of types of devices as well. Alexa is just not going to be that cylinder that sits on your counter. It's going to be
I think
in your refrigerator, and
I think there's exciting stuff that's coming from that platform.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is still being figured out right now by Amazon too, and I think all of us and I have an interest in it, as you can tell.
Yep.
And I know you do too.
Yep. And yeah, I just say I have a heavy interest.
Yeah. And
it's about
it's
an additional distribution platform, and any place that the media can be consumed easier is, or naturally is good for all of us.
And that platform could come to your car or your phone or all sorts of stuff. It could be everywhere you are. So it doesn't have to be just there.
Yeah, what you want to do is, I think right now from a innovation standpoint, I think Amazon is out innovating iOS. So, and that if you think about what I just said there, especially for the audience, that should you should raise your eyebrows just a little bit.
Yeah. Agreed.
So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
Yes,
it's all good.
Yeah, it's all good. It's about building audience.
I'm definitely more excited about that than I am about a few other things going on.
As long as they don't tell me I have to take my advertising out, then we may have to have a discussion.
That's what's next, Todd.
Not every podcaster is worried about money. More than half the people who listen to this show could probably give two craps about it. So
that's true, and honestly, a very few amount of shows get involved in dynamic insertion or have any interest in it.
Yeah,
because it's expensive technology too.
It doesn't have to be.
I know it doesn't, but it has been up to this point.
Yeah, that's another space ready and ripe for disruption.
That's saying it kindly, Todd. Disruption.
It's ready for disruption.
Or was it destruction or disruption? I'm not quite sure.
Disruption.
Yeah. Disruption. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Anytime.
All right. What?
Nothing. We're.
Is there anything else happening?
Oh man, there's probably a lot. We've really tore it up today. If we don't gain listeners from this show, my God, what could we gain listeners from? If you're a podcaster, you need to share this show with your fellow podcasters. Tell them and be honest with you, no one's talking about this. No one else is digging in like this, and because
we're sticking our necks out.
I'm not sticking my neck out. I live. I haven't changed my operandus modi from the beginning. So
that's true. That's true.
And so it's are people afraid? And maybe that's the reason why people are afraid to come on here.
Yeah, I can't get guests anymore.
But we're nice to them. We're nice to them. We don't, and we never really talk bad about people. We just, come on, have some cojones and come on and talk about your stuff.
Yeah.
I love to be challenged.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just going to set our own agenda. What do you guys think? Do you think we're too rough on people? Do you think people have a reason to be scared to come on the show? I really don't think they do. We've never treated guests badly at all.
No. I think that the thought is worse than the reality.
Yeah, we're nice to people. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, anybody that knows us really out there will tell you that.
Yeah. But anyway, come on board and tell us how we're wrong.
But we are outspoken about stuff.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
I mean, I think that the one guy that comes on and is like does the same with us is Rob Walsh.
Yeah.
I mean, he should really be our other co-host.
Probably true.
Yeah.
And Rob is I think though can be more reserved than you is sometimes, Rob. So.
Than me?
Yeah, sometimes. But Rob just does and then he's out.
Yeah, Rob. When Rob breaks his boxing gloves out, it gets a little bloody.
It's just a single punch. It's a single punch to the face, and he's done. Where I just I'm a grinder. I grind at it.
So what's my role in this? You guys have all of the meaty stuff covered.
Let's see here. I think I don't know. You're kind of you're the seed planter.
I'm the seed.
You got my blood pressure up to 200 over 180 here a few minutes ago about the.
Yeah. I think I know too much about what's going on in the space too. And you do too. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on that we don't talk about because we can't.
Yeah.
Or we shouldn't.
Yeah.
So.
But anyone that's watching, and if you're thinking about asking me to remove my advertising out of my show.
All right, Todd, I think we got to put up the explicit tag now. Sorry.
So anyway, I think we're at 90 minutes.
You just dropped the visual F-bomb. For those listening to this and not watching this, yeah. Is that going to get us banned from a country like India or something?
Maybe. And I am doing my Podcast Legends interview. I interviewed Tim Borkin last week.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And got another one today. I'll probably launch the show next week sometime. But
so are you going to try and get Mr. Weiner on?
He's not responding to emails, and I'm having a hard time getting in contact with Adam too. So like to have him on. He's willing. If I just got to get on his schedule, he's a busy dude. Their show prep for their show is massive, and he spends a lot of time doing research, get ready for his 3-hour show.
So who else are you planning on talking to?
Everyone that was in the beginning. I'll get you on there too, Rob. We'll get you on and get your full story. And,
we do that every week here, don't we?
So you'll be a little later down the road, but focus on people right now, 2004, 2006. The guy I'm talking to today started September 18th, 2004. So
that's about the same time I started.
Yeah, I think actually you beat him.
I think I was the 15th. Yeah.
So I think I was about October 14th or something in that range. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, that's all we're gonna do here, folks. We want to hear your comments on this one. It's Todd at New Media Show or Rob.
Rob at Spreaker.com or Rob at RobGreenlee.com. I've been posting some new content up on my blog at RobGreenlee.com, and that's with 2 E's.
And we
so
do have
oops. Yeah. And so I've been posting some. I wrote an article about simplicity in the podcasting space around listening platforms and the direction that things are going, and I do a regular show called the Spreaker Live Show. It's SpreakerLiveShow.com. So go check out some stuff there. I talk about some best practices stuff in the podcasting space too. But I also have a Twitter account at Rob Greenlee.
And we do have a Twitter account for this show. We don't even talk about it. It's NMS New Media Show Podcast. NMS Podcast. I couldn't get New Media Show. That was taken, but NMS Podcast is the Twitter account here if you want to follow us on Twitter. Of course, I'm available on Twitter at Geek News. But
So who has the New Media Show Twitter account?
I don't know. It's somebody. It's never tweeted to it. I've tried to acquire it. I've even offered up cash, and the person's never responded to emails. So, but anyway, NMS Podcast is the Twitter account for us. But that's it's going to wrap us up here. I want to thank you all for your attendance and your listening or watching. And we'll be back. Oh, next Saturday, Rob, I'm in Vegas, so I don't arrive until Saturday morning. So we'll have to talk about how we do the show. May have to do it on Sunday, the 28th, if you're available.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
that'd be okay.
Yeah, we'll have to use one of these new platforms that are available because I will not be able to host. So we'll have to dial into something.
Okay. And I'm going to be at the Mid-Atlantic Podcast Conference on September 10th.
10th,
yeah.
Okay.
Which is a Saturday.
All right.
Also.
And we'll figure out what we're going to do there. Maybe we have to miss a show or something. It's okay though.
I mean, it's possible I could do it from my hotel room there if I have good bandwidth.
Yeah, that's the challenge. And the East Coast bandwidth sucks. On the West Coast, bandwidth is good in hotels. So more than likely you'll have crappy bandwidth. But,
okay, that's always good news.
Yeah, it gets slower the farther east you go. I don't know what it is, but maybe you'll get lucky and the hotel will be an exception to the rule.
It's too far away from the internet, Todd.
Yeah. Yep. But anyway, anybody going to be in Vegas between 27th and the 31st, let me know. Give me a shout out. I'll be in town. All right. Okay. That's it. Everyone, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time here on the New Media Show. Everyone, take care.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.